think George touched on it. We have a new ordinance enforcer. We need to enforce our ordinances, and each of us needs to start with our own property and our own businesses. If we concentrate on downtown and Saginaw Street driving into town, we want to present a positive image. We are making improvements, but much more needs to be done.
When you talk about blight, there are kind of two ways you can look at it. Number one, you can look at the blight that you see at maybe businesses or, we have a stretch on our main street of factories and buildings and whatnot that are not residential. And so that's one area of blight. Another area that you might look at of blight is residences that have been left to deteriorate that may not be kept up. It's not an easy topic to address. Speaking from my own personal philosophy, I'm not much of a believer in heavy-handed government. I don't want grass measurers coming around and telling me how, I want to take pride in my own property. I want to keep up with that because I am a part of the community. It affects my neighbors. From a resource perspective with the village, for many years we haven't had the resource capacity to have dedicated code enforcers like many other communities might enjoy. In many larger communities, enforcement of code generates enough revenue through tickets to be able to pay for itself. We aren't that size and we don't have that capability. As it's been mentioned, we have started with a part-time building inspector who's having more duties added on as our resources go. That can address some code issues, that can address some neighborhood issues. But the other way of addressing blight too is, once again, creating conditions in the community, especially for the types of blight that you might see at our commercial or industrial buildings, that will either make people want to redevelop or move in and restore or make something of it. Right now, currently, the large tank factory on Saginaw Street is up for sale, and the village is actively pursuing a developer to find something to do with it. It's not necessarily easy, though. It's a big building, and either tearing it down or restoring it's going to be a pretty big price tag. That's what we see everywhere, but if we can use resources for redevelopment, whether they're tax credits or programs from the state, in the county, tap into partnerships to look at those, that's how blight is addressed on a more community-wide basis.
Thank you.
Ryan had definitely got a lot of good ideas there. I think that, addressing blight, I don't think that there's a community out there that doesn't have that as one of their major issues. Statewide, anywhere, local municipalities and whatnot. I think that definitely the code enforcement is a big issue that we start issuing, making the homeowners and the businesses follow the code that's already laid out. I think that another big part of it is getting businesses to come in here. And so once the community grows and the business grows, the pride, ensues, it grows larger, and then blight almost kind of takes care of itself, where people are buying buildings, people want to move here, they're restoring these old houses and these old buildings. I think that's kind of the whole thing. Getting businesses in here is a huge, huge part of it.
I've got what I think is a fun little idea for addressing the blight in our neighborhoods. It's not so much going to be able to address the industrial issues, but the residential stuff I think it'll be able to handle, and that's going to be, this is something I'm willing to spearhead. I haven't exactly brought it up with the administration or anybody else, kind of when I get to the election, and then I can bring it up. My idea is basically to get the residents involved with the residential blight situations where a house has been let, nobody lives at the house anymore, the grass is 3 feet tall, the fences are falling down, and I would like to initiate some sort of a program to get other residents that volunteer just to go over, cut the grass, paint the fence, shore everything up, and then I think that also would help instill a little bit more pride in a lot of our residents because they've got a stake in the community. They've helped with, clean up a piece of property that isn't their own, and I think that'll kind of bring some things together in our community.
Starting with Ms. Walton, do you have anything on this?
Well, it's local. I have a committee. I'm going to have a building committee now that addresses the blight for rental homes. And it's very simplistic, Bill. The way it works is if you are a landlord, it's your responsibility to go to the township, village, or city and register your home as a rental. Then if there's any type of code violation whatsoever, be it lawns or sofa on the front porch, Don't just send a letter, a violation letter to the person living in the home. Send me, the landlord, a copy of that violation. Then it's my responsibility to contact that tenant, show them the lease and say, look, you agreed to follow all rules and ordinances. If you do not, I will evict you. If I don't do anything, then I'm subject to the fines and liens on my home to fix the violation because I failed to do my job. I think it's a very simplistic bill. It gives additional home enforcement officers, if you will, as the landlords out there, making sure that their homes meet code, there are no violations, and if they don't, they'll be fined, so the incentive is to get them fixed.
I think there's three things that will eliminate blight. Number one, of course, is enforcement. Number two, economic development. All you have to do is look at the Midtown Detroit, and you'll see how a lot of those neighborhoods are being cleaned up because the values of the property have gone up enough where somebody's going to come in and develop and put a business or a home in there, and that cleans up the problem. Also, I think it's important that properties are properly assessed. If your home or business is over-assessed, over-taxed, there's only so much money in a family budget or a business budget. So if you're, assessed properly, then maybe there's some more money, available to, clean up your own problem. Plus, of course, peer pressure to that always helps. Thanks.
A quick commercial. There's 4 Boy Scout troops in Holland, 4. And last Thursday, I got called by 2 17-year-olds. They were looking for Eagle projects. Awesome way to do an Eagle project. When I received my Eagle, that's what I did. When I received mine, I drove Bobbie. So you have to use your service organizations. One of the things that we do as the Elks organization is we actually have work crews go out and we clean. That's what we do. To make a difference. One thing that I'm really, really proud of is when I was working in college. I know I sound like a nerd, but when I was in college, I worked at a Boy Scout camp up in Calcasas. It still is Camp Topeka. And me and a few of my friends were really involved in the green movement. So we were the first Boy Scout camp in the nation to start a grain recycling program. Now, I've taken that on, through my business. We recycle everything in our store, everything. And in Flint, Genesee County, blight's a serious problem. But down here, use your local community organizations, your Kiwanis, Boy Scouts, 810-919-5746. That's my phone number. 2 kids that need to get Eagle projects because they age out in March.
Thank you. All right. As we like to say, we'll end the organized question with a bang. Local municipalities have had difficulties with the new fireworks law, and it is reported that injuries and property loss have risen as a result of it. Would you consider legislation that requires consumers to have a certification to purchase fireworks, much like we'd require with hunter safety, boater safety, concealed weapons carry, and various driver's license endorsements? Mr. Robertson, you'll have the floor today.
The law governing fireworks in Michigan has been amended twice in the last 3 years. It was originally amended to basically allow folks to purchase fireworks and allow individuals to sell fireworks here in Michigan rather than having to go to other states. We amended after the legislature passed that in 2011 and 12. We amended it again in 2013 in response to concerns that were raised by locals about safety. I think this is an illustration of what the legislature does, it can undo. And I think we try to be responsive to the complaints that have been raised. The fireworks law was amended also to provide that a certain portion of monies from the changes in the law would go to local fire services and provide for safety as well. I'm certainly willing to entertain amendments to the law. I don't know necessarily about certification, but I will acknowledge the fact that as I go door to door in this district and I talk to constituents, a number of them have raised the issue. I'm willing to entertain changes in the law once again.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas.
I believe that there should be some type of legislation. We should be looking at these as Class A, B, C, D fireworks. As my buddy Lefty says, you know, he wished he knew what he was doing. Now, sir, these mortars, these flying mortars, they're really, really, really dangerous. And we do need to have some type of education on this. And they should be legislated.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
I think that local units of government should have some say and control in fireworks sold in their community, because we have received a lot of complaints, even at the county level, and I've heard it from a lot of township supervisors that they have the same issue, and I do think they should have some local control.
Mr. Grace?
Yes, instead of Robertson pointed out, the law has been revised many times. The last one I was involved with, as far as voting on, it was simple. The locals can now have full control. They can restrict fireworks every day of the year with the exception of federal holidays. They can restrict the time it's sold. They can restrict where it's sold. It's their ordinances that allows them to do that. It gives local control to them to make sure that their rules are being passed. So they have the ability now to pass the ordinances to restrict it any way they like.
Once again, I agree with Mr. Hoffman. I did a research project several years ago on why incorporated municipalities actually incorporated. I looked at the first 10 ordinances that were adopted, and among the top 3, there was construction ordinances, code enforcement, but also fireworks ordinances. I agree that local government should have complete control over the sale and the use of fireworks.
I think one of the biggest concerns that I hear in the village is the fact that our homes are older, they're built so close. I don't need one of those things to come bouncing down my roof. These old wood homes are tinder boxes. The problem with the legislature, as you talk about, or the laws that have been legislated, the problem is, for example, you can only have fireworks on the holidays, as you said, or you can only light it the day before or the day after. So 2 days later, when one goes off, how on earth does the police department figure out who lit that thing? We hear it, we saw it go up, but you got to be able to catch the guy red-handed. And I think what Mr. Thomas said is we may need to look at the level of fireworks we allow in the state. And on some of those bigger things, maybe certification is the direction to go on, something like that. Because we at least got to know how to handle it.
Else down there? Mr. Cruickshank.
I would just say that it seems like the local municipalities can already enforce that rule. The noise ordinance is past 10, I think it's in Holly. That seems like an easy one. Passing the extra laws of certifications, I don't think that would do any good, because people are going to go down to Ohio. They're going to spend their money regardless. Those are laws that people just will disregard. It doesn't matter. So I think that passing more laws is not always the answer. I think just common sense, talking with your neighbors, easy, reach your hand out and say, hey. I have the same thing, babies are sleeping, I go out, talk to them. 99% of the time, they're like, okay, no problem, that's fine.